As a quilter, have you ever been caught at a retreat and not had the supply that you need? It happened to me just once. It'll never happen again. I decided to make up my handy dandy emergency quilter's kit. So what I have in my little quilter's kit is I threw in a pair of their embroidery scissors that I can also use for cutting away applique. I never know when I'm going to have to use my color pencils. I might want to use them for marking. I might want to use them just to do some entangling and doodling if I find myself with a few extra minutes. I have a little piece of stabilizer just in case I come into something that, a pattern that might need the stabilizer. I don't bring too much of it along. I bring a little misty fuse. I, of course, have my handy dandy tape because if we're going to be paper piecing at all, we want to make sure that if we make a mistake, we have that tape to fix the pattern. I bring a pencil, I bring a Sharpie, I bring a pen, and I have a variety of threads. A lot of people will just throw one type of thread in. I have King Tut thread by Superior Threads. I have So Fine by Superior Threads. I have an Ultra Iris cotton quilting thread, and I try to keep my threads neutral in color, and the reason for that being is they won't show up on anything then. They're really nice for piecing. The only problem that I might have is if I decide to machine quilt something and with my domestic, it may not show up on there. So I have all of those. I also bring a rotary cutter. Now, I tend to like to bring the rotary cutter. This one is pressure sensitive, so if I press down, that's when it opens up. There isn't an open switch on it. So if I release the pressure, what happens is it'll go back into its little safety net, and I don't have to ever worry about reaching in and grabbing it by the blade. That's why I have that one in there. I bring an assortment of needles, and these needles are for my my sewing machine. I range all the way from the 8s all the way up to 12s, and I bring an entire pack because if I'm going to be using them, I have to think that there's a possibility I could break a needle. So I want to make sure I have everything on hand, and every needle is used for something different. I have quilting needles and I have piecing needles in there. I also bring an eraser because if I'm going to be drawing or if I'm going to be marking with a pencil for any reason, I want to make sure that I can get that mark off. I bring some pre-wound bobbins along. And I have this really great, this scissors has got a little serrated edge on it. It's really good for making very close cuts if I'm doing applique or something like that. Then I have a shears that's a little bit heavy duty. This is for cutting larger pieces. This is if I decide that I want to maybe do some sewing and I want to not just quilt, but actually make maybe an article of clothing. So I'll use my scissors versus my rotary cutter for that. I make sure that I have a good supply of pins with, and I also want to make sure that I always have a tape measure along. I have hand sewing needles, and I have Elmer's glue. Elmer's glue is great. You can use it for your binding. You can use it if you've got those tricky places where you have seams that they just seem to slip. I just put a little dab there, and it keeps them in place. Then I can pin, and I know they're going to come out just perfect. I always use the washable, disappearing Elmer's glue. And I also have 2 of those because when someone sees me using it, they'll always say, let me try that. So then I have it for them as well. I have this little light. It's a little light for that I can use to thread my needle. And there's the needle threader right there. It just comes out. So I can thread the eye of the needle, and I've got the little light on hand. Now, if you're going to bring a rotary cutter, the rotary cutter doesn't do you any good if you end up running over a pin. So I always bring a spare supply of rotary blades. But as well as the rotary blades, I want to bring a little box that says used because I want to have a place to put the used rotary blades. I always bring a good supply of marking tools. I have in here, there are some chalk marking tools, there are disappearing ink marking tools. I have a little bodkin, so if for any reason I want to go through a seam and pull, say, a piece of elastic or a little bit of little bit of rope or twine through, I'm able to do that. And what would sewing be without the unsewing? This good old seam ripper. We want to make sure that we have that along. And we always want to have a little bit of skincare. We work so much with our quilting needs. Our hands are with that fabric all the time. What happens is it starts wearing away the oils on your skin, and that's why you get all those little cracks. Make sure that you stay well hydrated. And I have a pin cushion. There's a few other things that I have in here. They're not necessary, but I certainly think that I need them. I have a pencil sharpener that I utilize. And I have these tweezers, and the tweezer works really great. Sometimes you'll get that little thread that might be caught down in your bobbin area. You want to be able to get that out, and if your fingers are a little bit too cumbersome at times, I always bring that along. This also works good as a stiletto to help push your fabric through if you have a small piece of point. And then I have a little thread nipper. So I hope that you go on and you decide that you would like to have a little emergency kit too. It just is so helpful. I'm not always trying to second guess myself when I'm heading to the retreat or to the sewing day with my quilt guild. I just pick up the box. I know everything that I need is in it. I bring my sewing machine, I bring my little portable iron, and I'm set to go. There's no hems, haws, or what's about it. I am ready to go and ready to sew. So I hope that you develop a nice little kit for yourself.